Survivor Specialist John and McKenna are back, and we are so excited to rewind Wednesday's episode and talk about some past moments that remind us about some present moments. John, how'd you enjoy the episode?
You know, it wasn't my favorite episode of 47 so far. Frankly, very high bar to clear at this point. But it was nice. It was a little refreshing having a real merge, even though Jeff refused to call it a merge. We see you, Jeffrey. Like, this is absolutely a merge. There is no other way to put it. This is 13 people on a beach. All of them, except for one, are able to be voted for. How is this not a merge? Just because they don't have buffs? Buffs determine the merge now, McKenna.
Yep, apparently not the fact that they're all on one beach with, like, Jeff being like, hey, it's now the individual portion of the game. So...
It's fine. You know what? The semantics of whatever this last episode was, because it's not really an earn the merge. It's kind of earn the merge, but it's not the same way we've been referring to earn the merge previously in the new era. So whatever we end up wanting to call whatever happened this episode, it was a different episode than we usually get. I mean, Phil and Will really talked about that a lot on Wednesday. Just the idea, like, it was pretty clear at the very beginning of this episode, Rome was going home, and I know personally myself, it felt too obvious to be true the entire time until we actually got to tribal council. I was like, I guess this is actually happening.
Yeah.
I don't know how you felt about it, McKenna.
I thought there was going to be somehow, some way, someone was going to mess this up and go a different way. So, yeah, I did not think Rome was going home, but...
And you know what?
It happened.
Polarizing character, I know. I loved having Rome on my screen. I thought he was so enjoyable. I just, it is sad to see him go, but I'm really excited to see what these players can do without this pinch of chaos floating around the beach now, because there's so much. I think the game really opens up with Rome gone.
Maybe I'm wrong, it opens a lot of things up for sure.
We'll see. I'm excited. I am excited to see where things are going. This seems like it was a bit of a transition episode into, I mean, I guess it's literally a transition episode into the merge phase of 47. But even from like the storytelling standpoint, it felt like a transition period here in the season. And I'm sure we get back to it next week, and it is going to pick right back up where we expect it to be, hopefully, because, I mean, most of these tribes are still kind of like a little on shaky ground. So we'll see how everything plays out moving forward.
Yes. And so we are going to move into our outwit moments, and this is some part of our Patreon. So make sure you watch episode 7 of China, Not As Dumb As I Look. It is the merge episode of China, but it is also where we find, you know, that there's some immunity idol shenanigans, like in this episode with Sue, how she thinks she hides her idol stuff, and then all of a sudden people are finding the red paint, and then it gets Caroline and Tiana remember the red paint on her chin and all on her hands, so they now know Sue has got something going on. So yeah, we're gonna talk like finding idol bits, or something's afoot with the idol, something's amiss at camp, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's that idea of like something's off. You notice something like out of place, and that makes you realize, oh, somebody has something that I didn't know about, but now I probably have an idea of where it is. I have a question for you, McKenna.
Yes.
When we find out in this episode of 47 that they are all going to the Tuku Beach, and then we see how everything like plays out, and we see, you know, there's this advantage they have to search for, which leads to people finding this red paint and ultimately like Rome digging up the pot and everything like that. Do you think production intentionally had the merge at the Tuku camp because of this idol?
Now that you say that, gotta be. Because also they probably planned this backup idol once the box idol was played, to have this other idol here at Tuku Beach. So I don't know if it was going to be the same jar of red paint at every camp. So, it's a possibility that every camp gets hit, but I don't know. That's a little sus with
I know.
them going to Tuku.
I know. I like maybe like we're giving production too much credit here. Maybe it was just a coincidence. However, like no matter what it was, it worked out perfectly, right? The
Mhm.
fact that there is this scavenger hunt for an advantage for this challenge, and it leads this wild goose chase, and I really, really enjoy how the editor set us up for this a couple of episodes ago when Sue does find this idol, and we
Mhm.
think she gets away with it, right?
Yep.
Like it seems like she obscured everything, and then as we are surveying this well area in this episode, it's very clear she did not get away with this at all. Like, yes,
No,
the Tuku seemed to drop it, but as soon as you start looking a little closer in
it's
the
like
area,
all right there. It's like
there's
right under
paint
those leaves
everywhere.
or just off the path. It's wild.
So it was really interesting, and it really did remind me of again the moment that we're talking about that's got us prompted us for the Patreon this week, and that is at the merge in China, right before the merge, but in that episode where James has just been given the hidden immunity idol from the Fei Long camp,
Mhm.
and has gone back to Jean-Hu, and is like, well, I know where the Fei Long one was, so I should grab the one from Jean-Hu as well. Accidentally pries down the wrong plaque first, finds it, like discards it beside it, doesn't have enough time to put it back. And then Jamie, Eric, and PG are just hanging out in the shelter, and Jamie notices, wasn't there a plaque there before?
Mhm.
Something's just off, right? Like it's like, hey, what's this red paint? Oh, hey, there was a plaque there before. And Eric goes, he finds the plaque that James discarded and brings it back. It doesn't say anything. It's like, is this an idol? I don't know what's
Yep.
going on here. But it prompts Jamie to go into James's bag in order to see if he has
Mhm.
anything. And the funniest thing about this entire sequence is she goes in and just like finds the plaques hidden in his pants, but doesn't take them out to notice that they say they're an immunity idol on the backside.
Though I don't know if she would have been able to see it because she does do this sequence at night too.
That is true. That is true. And we have to concede the fact that things look a lot lighter when they are filmed than what they actually look like at nighttime in the middle of nowhere, China. So
Yeah.
that's fair. That's a good point, McKenna.
Yeah. So even if she took it out, she might not have seen that it was an idol. Yeah, that moment in China is very similar because also on the arch you have the non-stained square
Mhm.
from the little plaque as well. And then, other people start to notice like, oh, wasn't there a little decorative thing there at one point? And it starts that snowball of like, how do I pivot around this, like with Sue and the pots and stuff like that.
Yeah, and like you said, it was so obvious. Like when you and maybe it's like a little color change in editing or whatever, but it looks pretty obvious that I
Mhm.
mean, I guess it was obvious enough that Jamie could notice it from the shelter, which wasn't like right beside these arch at all.
Right.
Um, I do think this probably happened a little earlier than it's presented in this episode.
Mm.
I assume it probably happened fairly closely to when James came back from being kidnapped, rather than like as it shows, like kind of like after like the
Just
tribal council had
before the
failed.
merge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Like I'm assuming it happened a little while longer, and that kind of makes sense based on the fact that Jamie has a knife to look in James's pants. Um, but
Yeah.
it's just so funny, and it is one of those situations where even throughout that episode, we see Jamie kind of flaunting this knowledge of I know where the idols are, and in contrast to Caroline in 47 being like, I'm not going to tell anyone. Like, I know, but like, Sue, like, I'm proud of you. Proud of you for finding this. Then the way Caroline phrases this is so masterful, I think, because the I'm proud of you is like, man, good on you for finding an idol, but why the hell did you not tell me about it?
Mhm. Yeah. It's Sue's secret to keep or now probably tell the entire camp.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
that's the thing, right? Like we don't see in this episode what Tiana does with this information. So it'll be
mhm,
interesting to see how Sue
and
responds to it
Tiana
moving forward.
navigate that.
Yeah.
My moment is from Survivor Philippines, and that is when the idol is the emblem on the rice container, and Dana actually points it out for the Calabao tribe, and is like, "Wasn't there like something on here?" And then Jeff's like, "You know what? Yeah, there was." And they have a full conversation about it, and Penner's just like off to the side, being like, I don't remember anything. Interesting. I don't remember anything. And it's similar to China where it's something that you see every day around camp, but I don't know if I would have noticed this rice bucket one as much as I would have noticed the China once they're gone plaques.
Plus, yeah. I think that the big thing, I think the thing with the rice topper here, and even if we look at the Matt Singh clue for it, that it was like right under your nose.
Mhm.
It is literally right under your nose. You're seeing it every day. You're interacting with it every day. I think it missing isn't more of a there was something here. I think it would take you, and I think this is why this conversation goes the way it does. I think it's one of those something's missing, and I'm not sure what it is. I need to confirm with someone that I'm not going crazy right now.
Yeah, and it's like a little pop of color because it was like their color on top of the rice. It was like a little pop of color to like be something noticeable, but then, it blends in with the container as well. So it's like there might have been like little, I don't know, grabby things on, I don't know. I don't know how things work.
Feelings? What are you trying to
Um
explain?
no, like you know
Handles? Is
how
that what
in,
you're
like,
saying?
you know how in rings that there's, like, little pieces that are on top of the gem?
Okay, sure. Like claws. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like little claws. So it could have had, like, that on the rice bin, and then
Mhm.
Dana sits on it and is like, "This is a little off and pokey." But, like, in the scene that we see her, like, sit on the rice container and then is like, "Wait, wasn't there something on top of this?"
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting, and the fact that it's a whole tribe, right, where the entire tribe kind of finds out about it.
Mhm.
Um, and then we kind of have another one of these conversations, but it's a little different because in the Philippines we see Penner going to Jeff Kent and being like, "Hey, so I have an idol. Like, let's work together." As because that information is kind of out there, and there's already the suspicion, so he's
Mhm.
really using it to solidify something. Whereas I'm pretty confident, had Caroline not approached Sue at all, I'm pretty sure Sue would have just kept this quiet the entire time.
Oh yeah, 100%. Sue is keeping this under lock and key. I believe that.
The
But
interesting thing I found about that as well is that based on the edit we see in 47, there was an assumption. There never seemed to be an assumption that that was the challenge advantage.
oh, the red paint.
Yeah, because Genevieve keeps going out and
Mhm.
gets there, and then announces to every. I also think this is like a really masterful thing that Genevieve does. Announces to everyone, "I found the challenge advantage," to make it very clear someone on Tuku must have done this paint thing.
Yeah, exactly. And with the fractures on Tuku, it'll be interesting to see what happens next episode with it.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So for our outplay this week, we had a schoolyard pick, which was so much fun. And we're going to talk about schoolyard picks and challenges versus in the tribal phase or like for picking tribes because here it's a little bit different because they're not merged, but they're doing a reward challenge / immunity, but like they're doing a reward challenge here, which we have seen in recent seasons, not new era. We have seen people do schoolyard picks for reward challenges, but there was the distinct fact of there hasn't been a pre-merge schoolyard pick since Gabon, and it's annoying because this is a merge, but it's not a merge.
Yeah, I mean, the technicality of it all makes it so that this is technically a pre-merge schoolyard pick, which hasn't happened in 30 seasons. Which, wild concept. But of course, like, I saw that information floating around on X the other day, and I was like, there's no way this is true. I swear there have been schoolyard picks, and there have been for challenges. But the thing is those always happen post-merge, because you need to do a schoolyard pick to figure out who you're competing with in a reward challenge. So it's very interesting. And like you said, the most interesting thing about this one, and it is really unfortunate we didn't get to see the pick. Like the picks
they
at all.
cut that out, and it's like I wish they showed more of the schoolyard pick stuff because that is really interesting to watch, or maybe release it as a secret scene or something where like we get to see how they decided, you know, each person for the tribe, because especially with this specific challenge, they had to then compete against them. So it's like, ooh, I want Sam for the individual, for the team portion, but do I want Sam for the individual? Not so much, because we don't know what it is yet. Now with the balancing on the using the bow, sure, I'll take Sam because he might not be as coordinated.
Yeah, and I mean, like, they at least, I mean, they were literally standing beside those balance beams. They should have been able to discern what that individual portion of the challenge was going to be at that point. But I think more importantly, like, we didn't even get Jeff saying so and so is a captain and then listing their team, right?
Yeah, so like in Game Changers, we have the infamous Suri balance beam, and Michaela completely misses the clue or the advantage challenge. And that is a schoolyard pick where after Jeff says, all right, let's pick your tribes and then or teams and then we'll get started. And then after that, we are on the mats and he says, all right, Culpepper was a captain. He picked Debbie, Sierra, Andrea, and Aubrey. Suri was a captain. Zeke, Sarah, Troy, and Ty are on her team, with Michaela not being the one selected. And it's just, I wish I would have known who was captains so I could maybe like piece together maybe who was first or how they were thinking on playing out some of these, you know, the rest of this challenge, because we see some things like this in MTV's The Challenge of schoolyard picks, and we see how their schoolyard pick and thought processes affect the challenge. So I would have loved to see more of this in Survivor.
Yeah, I know from, you know, facts that are out there now. I know Teeny was one of the captains. I'm not sure who the second captain is at this point, but I know Teeny was one of them. And
Did
in regards,
she pick the full tribe, or was it Teeny then that pick gets to pick like the Palau?
I don't know about that. I the information I have is Teeny was a captain because Teeny tweeted it. But with this game changer, the interesting thing with this game changers example is the odd person out, because sometimes we have the odd person out in these schoolyard pick moments, or just like in challenges in general. We had an odd person out, but it was a preemptive odd person out in 47 this week with Genevieve's advantage, literally putting her on the outs. She doesn't have to go through the selection or the being picked aspect of it, and just immediately goes to the individual competition. But in Game Changers, we know the dramatic irony of being the viewers we know there's an advantage that the person who is sitting out should have an opportunity to get.
Yeah, now
But
Genevieve just has, like, here is the advantage. You have it instead of it, like, hidden on the bench.
which I might add, massive advantage. Like, not
Yeah,
only does
insane.
she not have like the 50-50 chance of not winning that first portion, not putting all that strength in, because it was a fairly strenuous challenge by the looks of it. Like, especially getting up that vertical wall afterwards, like that's not an easy thing to do.
Mhm.
And on top of that, she's not covered in mud
What
on this
if
balance beam. And let me tell you, I have a gripe with these people being covered in mud, McKenna. I could not tell who half of these people were from one another.
Yeah.
I don't know
I
if
mean,
you could very easily, but like I was like, I don't know who I'm looking at right now for half of
it
them.
was a struggle. It was a struggle. But all right, what if with Genevieve's reward, what if it was a little less OP in she doesn't automatically get the meal, but she gets to oh, never mind. She would still have they would still have odd numbers. I was going to say like she still has to compete, but she would have a chance even if she loses the reward to play in immunity. Like she has a
Yeah,
lock
I think
chance
they
in
were just trying to
immunity.
get out of the odd number thing. And the interesting
I
thing with
know.
game changers though is that because it's a schoolyard pick and because Michaela doesn't get picked, it's this cascade of effects that lead to the fact that Michaela doesn't notice this advantage sitting under her because she's
Mhm.
fuming the entire time.
I just don't get why you don't pick Michaela. Like, I don't know why you don't pick Michaela in a challenge. She's a pretty dominant in a lot of challenges, and you don't have the factor of you have to play for immunity with these people afterwards. I'm just
I
shocked that like a tie gets picked over Michaela.
I'm sorry, and I'm sorry to anyone this might offend. Suri got picked over Michaela.
Suri was a captain.
Oh, that's
She was
right.
forced.
That's why she was forced to. Thank you for reminding me of that. But the point of the fact is, like, you look at this challenge, maybe you don't think Michaela is very well suited for it in comparison to other people because this was the final. Is this final 9 or final 7 in Game Changers? You have the notes, right? But
It
point of
was
the matter is, the
2,
point of the fact
3,
is like,
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
yeah,
No. 1, 2, 3,
no
4,
ways then.
10, 11.
11.
Final 11.
It's final 11. So maybe the point that maybe people just didn't want to hang out with Michaela and Reward. Maybe that's just all I came down to. Maybe it was like a social aspect. But it's so interesting seeing the schoolyard pick because schoolyard picks just have such a different effect on Survivor, and it does have that always social game going on with it that we don't see when it's like let's do a random rock draw to figure out what tribes we're on.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Speaking about figuring out what tribes we're on, let's head over to Gabon, which is the last time we did see a pre-merge
Mhm.
schoolyard pick, and it was a disaster. Uh, it was. I mean, it was Gabon, so of course it was a disaster. This is the infamous. Okay, everyone, rank your tribe mates, and then the people who are ranked first get to be the team captains, and they're going to alternate picking people from opposing tribes. It was really weird because I'm pretty sure Marcus picks 2, and then Jeff goes to the person who's picked gets to pick the next person.
I don't remember. I haven't watched Gabon
It's so weird,
a little
but
bit.
this is the very interesting swap where again everyone's ranked. Marcus and Maddie are the captains, and it's alternating back and forth. This is when like Ken picks Kelly because she's hot.
Yep.
This is Susie getting picked before Bob. But
Yep.
again, the interesting thing about this schoolyard pick, it is an odd number of people when they are doing it, and the last person goes to Exile Island. Which, I mean, again, granted, not the only time they've done this. They've done this a lot with Exile Island in play. But it's just funny because it's sugar again.
There's always been something like added on to these like schoolyard picks. Like with this schoolyard pick, it had, you know, challenge in mind. Now it has what was I gonna say? I lost it. Anyway, it has like you ranked people of importance. So there's information that you're getting. And so you want to maybe pick your tribe mates based off of the information that you're getting from, you know, the rankings. And these people just don't because it's Gabon.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what it comes out. I mean, there's conversations about how toxic everyone is and how it'll ruin everything. So they should try to put them on the other person's tribe. Like this entire thing was just such a mess. And it's not a surprise it took this long for Survivor to bring back a pre-merge schoolyard pick.
It's not a pre-merge schoolyard pick.
It is. Jeff said it wasn't a merge, so therefore pre-merge.
It makes no sense.
But I'm just hoping this is kind of a catalyst to bring back schoolyard picks. I think they are kind of important to Survivor, and I think they reveal a lot of information, and there is strategy involved. We've talked about in the past how important it is to pick who you take on rewards. We talked about that last season a lot. But when it comes to picking who is competing for rewards, there's a different strategy involved. And it's more interesting to watch people navigate that strategy of it than watching them navigate, okay, I'm just taking the people I like on reward.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We ready to move on to our Outlast?
We are.
All right. So Outlast, we're talking like weird merges here because this was a merge at the end of the episode, but like there was also technical like merge shenanigans going on because we didn't have the typical earn the merge of half are safe, half are vulnerable. So like that's typically how we've been doing it, but now only one is safe with immunity, and it's a big tribal council where everyone else isn't immune, and it's like, then what is this, Jeffrey? if not a merge?
It's so weird because we have Kyle who wins immunity but also doesn't have a vote, and of course the person who wins immunity at the merge technically has a lot of power because they can kind of push a vote a lot better. But in this instance, you don't even really need to push a vote because everyone's just like, yeah, let's vote out Rome anyways. The editors kind of frame it that like, yes, the winners were like, yeah, let's all agree on Rome. But it kind of seemed consensus was in long before that. It just had to be spoken at some point.
Yeah. So our first weird merge that we're going with is Thailand. We're bringing Thailand into the podcast, everyone, because this is probably the only time it fits. Because Jeff does essentially what he does here in 47, and that's like, you're all living on one beach now, congrats. And he never says the word merge. So they all think they're merged. They all start making plans to vote together. And then he's like, all right, time for your next tribal immunity. And everyone is shook. And then he has to clarify, like, oh, I didn't say we were merged. What are you talking about? And it's the same thing here. We get to a tribal reward / immunity challenge in 47, and then after the vote out is when Jeff says, hey, you're merged, congrats.
Yeah, it's really weird. And again, we're kind of dealing with semantics at this point because obviously Thailand's different because Thailand set it up to make it seem like a merge. There weren't 6 seasons leading into Thailand where there was this like weird ambiguity before the merge in like this mergatory that we've gotten used to in the new era. Instead, Thailand had seen 4 seasons of, hey, it's the merge, you're all together now, play all together. Which is why she ends like, man, I hate everyone on my tribe. I'm going to go work with the other tribe. And then it bites her in the ass because turns out they're not merged, and instead they have to compete as tribes, and she ends on the losing tribe and has to deal with the fact that, yeah, well, I clearly made it obvious I was betraying all of you, so this is fun.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like while like the boot isn't as similar, just the way that the episode goes about it of like I'm happy they're all celebrating that they dropped their buffs on their original beaches, that they made the quote unquote merge, but really they're just like Thailand and are not confused, but they're just like, well, we got to play as if it is the merge and make these relationships, but meanwhile we're not really at the merge, but it's just like this weird point in the game that I feel like makes no sense anymore, and like it leaves me so dissatisfied that I feel like Rome made the merge. While he doesn't have to be the first juror, we can bring, not that I like the twist, but we can bring back the twist of you make the merge but not the jury if this is the issue.
I mean, we've been doing that the last couple seasons.
I know. I hate it, but like from like the start where there's no like
Yeah.
mergatory boot, right? Like
Right.
so Rome is officially like in the merge. Like if we bring back that where it's like an official merge, you drop your buffs, because we're also missing that moment. Like Thailand doesn't really give us that moment anymore of like you made the merge, here's a bunch of new people, because they've been living on the same beach. There's not like a you made the merge celebrate moment, because it's not a merge. They're now meeting everybody, but it's just not a merge, and it just doesn't hit the same.
Yeah, and it's almost weirder in 47 because of what we had happen last week with the whole like reward challenge and
Mhm.
the survivor social hour of it all. And because there is all that intermingling, it felt like we could naturally go into a merge. In fact, like we had questions going into this episode before it was made very clear that there was no mergatory, that like what is happening here? Like what
Mhm.
has going on? Does this mean we don't have to deal with mergatory? And then when we get into this episode and everyone's like, cool, there's no mergatory, there's no like we see the clip of Jeff saying 12 of you are at risk of getting voted out, one of you safe. We're all like, yes, real merge. And then Jeff just says,
Only
but you're
one of
not
you will
merged.
win the buff.
Yeah. It's like, what is this? So now all of a sudden we just have this weirdness in Survivor where people are voted out without their buffs. The only other time we have had that, other than the new era, is Redemption Island seasons where they have to burn their buff on the way out. Seems weird.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. Well, speaking
Speaking of
of
weird,
more weird things,
and speaking of like this intermingling of tribes prior to a merge, it's the one world merge, which I know like doesn't seem all that weird in retrospect, but think about it. Like these are two tribes that have been living on the same beach the entire time. Again, a
they have like
concept that
a few weeks on a separate beach, or not weeks, a few like
moments. Yeah.
challenges and vote outs on a separate beach, but then all went back together.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where yes, they're living on different ends of the beach, but there's so much intermingling, and we saw that early on in One World, right? Like Colton obviously spending a lot of time with the girls, and then we do get the swap, and we have Kim and Troyzen realizing each other are massive threats and everything, and we have this like jockeying for position that happens with the merge, but it's kind of been building to this the entire time. And it's
Mhm.
where Kim, managed to get a stranglehold on the game by voting out Jonas. And now all of a sudden the women have like free reign over the men in this season. But because of this weird interaction of always knowing each other, it feels kind of like it did in 47, where like this idea of the merge loses its meaning
Mhm.
because nothing's actually different other than the fact that we've just put all these people together.
Now they're in one shelter instead of two. Like,
Yeah. Right?
yeah,
Like,
it just doesn't feel the same. It doesn't have the same ring to it as like you've made the merge. Like see them all happy that they made the individual portion of the game, but, like, you sort of already are there in one world a little bit, because it's like you're making your own individual relationships with the guys, with the girls,
Mhm.
because you have that direct access and connection to the other tribe. And it just doesn't, like, feel as mergy because they already started merged.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what the new era has done to us too. Sure, it's not to the extreme of One World, but I kind of miss the moments, and I realized this watching China today when I saw how out of place the moment is in the China episode. But Jeff saying, "Drop your buffs, we are merged." It feels like one of these like very visceral Survivor moments. You know, one of those
Mhm.
moments that really evokes emotion in the audience. And I mean, there are moments where I'm like, hell yeah. I was hyped for yesterday's episode. I was like, merge baby, jumping up and down, getting ready for it. And then Jeff says it's not a merge. I'm like, Jeff, what are you doing? You're taking away this moment. I was so excited. And I
Yeah.
still am because it's Survivor. I'm always excited about Survivor. But it's just like,
Mhm.
I could have been a little bit more excited.
Yeah, exactly. Jeff, next season, you were this close to making it perfect, but we'll try again. Alrighty, so we are watching episode 7 of Survivor China over on the Patreon, Not As Dumb As I Look, and you'll get that tomorrow from us. John, you kind of already ran down on Monday because we went live on Monday.
I did.
The schedule, but just a brief little happenings and goings ons.
Yeah, I mean, you get it all again. I mean, maybe you didn't listen to us on Monday because you're like, hey, why is there no Survivor Rewind last Friday? And you didn't notice that we went live on Monday instead. But here we are. Obviously, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate it when you do that. Monday, Phil and I talked about our top 10 non-English horror movies. That was a ton of fun. Go check that out. Some amazing suggestions from both Phil and myself there. Obviously, recap on Wednesday with Phil and Will. This morning, Phil and Blake went live with Digging Deeper. There was a House of Villains recap this morning. At some point this weekend, Phil is doing a power predictions and power rankings with someone. So you got to stay tuned to find out who that is. We still don't know. But it'll be someone there with Phil to talk about where everyone's standing going into this actual merge. And then over on the Patreon, we have so much stuff going on. Phil, Will, and Blake, with Every Season Matters, have gotten into Guatemala. That's a fun season. They have a lot of fun things to talk about there. We have $5 Tuesdays. Phil and I still talking horror movies all month. We have the Survivor Rewind, where you can listen to us tomorrow. Casting Perspective. Phil's after show about Wednesday. And Phil finished 2018 Australian Survivor, and he loved that post-merge. So make sure you listen to that. It'll be fun to listen to. And of course, you can tune right back in here next Friday, where I'll be back. McKenna won't be, though, but I will. So we'll see you next week.